On the day Katrina entered my office accompanied by her father and piles of legal papers, she wore the same navy blazer she donned at her Harvard Business School graduation 7 years prior, meticulously pressed. She had carefully orchestrated this confrontation. As she surveyed the staff I'd recruited, the buzzing servers in the transparent data center I constructed from scratch, and the logo I drafted on a Waffle House napkin at 2 a.m. in 2017, she declared to everyone in earshot, "I'm here to claim what belongs to me before this foundering vessel succumbs completely." My CFO, Damien, paused his phone conversation. My head of engineering, Priya, lifted her gaze from her screen. The receptionist, a 23-year-old named Tyler who had rejected a position at Google to work with us, stood motionless, clutching a coffee cup. Remained silent, as what Katrina, her father, and their lawyers were unaware of was that at 11:47 p.m. the previous day, I had received confirmation of a $94.3 million wire transfer. We had recently concluded the largest Series C round in Austin's tech history, and I had been aware for 3 weeks that this money would arrive. I wish to share with you the story of the 7 years between the sketch on a Waffle House napkin and that morning in my lobby. I want to discuss the expense of constructing something from nothing, the impact it has on a marriage when one partner's career advances while the other struggles with instant ramen and air mattresses in a small East Austin apartment due to financial necessities of the company. Additionally, I wish to recount what transpired after Katrina entered the doors, as the actual, complex, heartbreaking truth deviates from your expectations. If this narrative strikes a chord with you, touching on themes like ambition, marriage, and mutual obligations during pursuit of something grander than oneself, promptly click the subscribe button and share your thoughts below. Has anyone ever underestimated you despite their support? I'd love to hear your experiences. Let's dive in. My name is Noah Calloway, born in Beaumont, Texas, a town seldom linked with tech entrepreneurship. Beaumont is more recognized for oil and gas industries. It's a place where one's family history is defined by years of hard work, success signified by union jobs with benefits, and retirement plans, with the loftiest aspiration for a kid from my neighborhood being granted a scholarship to UT Austin. I was that kid, majoring in computer science, class of 2014. However, I didn't graduate not because I struggled academically. I had a GPA of 3.8. In my junior year, I abandoned my education due to developing software that addressed a highly specific and painful issue for small to medium logistics firms. Amazingly, 3 companies were already paying me a monthly subscription before I even drafted a business plan. My professor, Dr. Whitfield, warned me against this decision, claiming it was a disastrous mistake. He advised me in his office at Gates Dell Complex, "Noah, the cemetery of Silicon Valley is overflowing with 20-year-olds who thought they had the next Google. Stay in school." Despite my immense respect for Dr. Whitfield, I heeded his advice and withdrew from UT, using my savings of $400 to move to a co-working space on South Congress Avenue with just my laptop and sleeping bag. This was in October 2015, where I later met Katrina in February 2016 at an Austin Convention Center networking event. 24-year-old woman in a red dress, distinguished by not being engrossed in her phone during conversations, was a freshman at UT's Macomb School of Business. She exuded unmatched self-assuredness. Upon learning I was developing a logistics software company, she fired off 14 unyielding questions, delving into the business aspects rather than casual small talk. Questions like revenue, churn rate, and competitive edge. I responded to each question honestly, even disclosing the uncomfortable ones. Afterward, she commented, "Your predicament is clear. You're an exceptional engineer but a poor salesman. You need someone to present this effectively." Intrigued, I asked if she was offering help. She replied, "I'm observing." We began dating within a month. In discussing those initial stages of startups, it's crucial to emphasize what often gets overlooked, the struggle behind the success stories. Instead of focusing on funding rounds, growth statistics, and media coverage, people tend to gloss over the sleepless nights, like one on a Tuesday at midnight, spent hunched on the floor of your apartment, grappling with a malfunctioning integration while your phone is dying and you haven't eaten since morning. Simultaneously, in the next room, your girlfriend is crying because her study group has decided to exclude her due to her dedication to the project you share together. The hardships, the genuine arguments are left untold. Katrina and I experienced our first serious spat in March 2017. 14 months after we had met. She recently declined an opportunity for a summer internship at McKinsey's Dallas office, a chance coveted by UTMBAs to assist you with your initial investor pitch preparations. It wasn't until a month later when I stumbled upon the rejection email she sent them by accident while seeking a client file on our shared computer that I learned of her decision. You declined McKinsey, I remarked. She nonchalantly shrugged. You required aid, she explained. Katrina, that was McKinsey, you noted. I understood its significance, Noah. Why didn't you inform me? After a prolonged silence, she confessed. I would have urged you to accept it if I had told you. I wanted to help you instead. This moment, which should have been one of the most romantic in my life, held a hidden depth that only later became clear. A subtle tallying, the opening of an account, a line etched that took years to fully realize its implications. She abandoned McKinsey for me. This fact was always evident, though never explicitly mentioned. The presentation proceeded satisfactorily, albeit with minor flaws. The initial term sheet we received was disrespectful, designed to provide operational capital but rob us of almost all significant equity control. Nevertheless, it sufficed. We sealed a seed investment round worth $1.2 million from an Austin-based angel investor group in August 2017. I hired 3 engineers. I leased a genuine office, a modest Fifth Street suite, devoid of luxury, the kind that echoed with a rattling air conditioner akin to a failing engine. And for the first time since leaving UT, I felt like I was leading a legitimate company. We got married in October. A low-key ceremony at Barton Creek, attended by 40 people, adorned with string lights, my mother crying throughout the event. Katrina donned a $85 dress from a South Congress vintage shop. I wore the only suit I owned for the occasion. The day was perfect. In May 2018, Katrina completed her studies at McCombs and secured a job promptly, an authentic one with a formal title and a salary that surpassed our marriage's initial combined income for the first year. She joined Hargrove Partners, a management consulting firm situated in the Frostbank Tower, the type of building characterized by its monetary scent. I felt proud of her sincerely, acknowledging her diligent efforts and well-deserved rewards. However, a change occurred in our relationship that I didn't recognize as something specific until much later. During her student days, there was an egalitarian quality between us. Exhausted from working all night coding, we found solace at Juan and Emilion at 7 a.m., sharing tacos due to financial constraints and our shared appreciation for their excellent breakfast tacos. As her career took off with fancy dinners at Uche, I faced cash flow crises, personnel matters, and the silent, arduous task of constructing something from the ground up. Though she gathered prestige, I accumulated issues, and there's a truth I'm not proud to admit. I mishandled it. Not in any dramatic fashion, but subtly and perhaps more damagingly, I retreated. 2019 in Tarrytown, Katrina felt as if she was sharing a home with someone preoccupied by a distant reality. I abandoned scheduled dinners and overlooked anniversaries, not all but enough. Our conversations often revolved around my company, leaving no room for other topics. One evening at our kitchen table, she voiced her concern. Noah, it feels like I'm married to a startup. I responded jokingly. You are, failing to elicit a laugh from her. Simultaneously, Katrina's consulting work honed her abilities that left me in awe, even from afar. She grew more formidable with each passing day, demonstrating an edge in meetings, bolstering her analytical prowess, and refining her communication skills. Katrina's father, Gerald Whitmore, a semi-retired investment banker from Houston, was initially doubtful of me, but as Katrina's success grew, his doubts solidified into something more rigid. I overheard him once during Thanksgiving 2019 in the kitchen with Katrina's older brother Derek, while I believed he was watching football elsewhere. His company is a house of cards, Gerald stated. He lacks formal education and real business training. He got lucky with some early customers and has been coasting since. When it crumbles, and it will crumble, it will take Katrina down with it. Derek replied. She seems content, though, Gerald countered. She seems occupied. That doesn't mean she's happy. I should have stepped into the kitchen then. I should have sat down with Gerald for an open discussion about the business, presented him with the data, explained our strategy, and addressed his genuine concerns like a rational adult deserved. Rather than proceeding, I retreated to the sofa, amplified the game's sound, and remained silent. This was my second significant blunder. By January 2021, our company, which I christened Pathstream due to its software that facilitated the efficient navigation of intricate supply chains for goods, had expanded to 41 staff members, reported annual sales of $8.7 million, and possessed a product that outperformed competitors in our niche substantially. We'd recently sealed a deal with a regional grocery distribution network from San Antonio, which promised to triple our earnings if executed proficiently. I should have been jubilating. However, I was managing a predicament instead. One of my fellow founders, Brendan Walsh, who had been with me since the start and held 15% of the company, expressed his intent to depart. He'd received an attractive offer from a robust competitor, and he desired to cash out his shares instantly at a valuation that we couldn't sustain without obtaining additional funding. Brendan and I were once close. 4 months, his exit negotiation was my most agonizing professional experience, taking up nearly all of my mental resources. During that period, Katrina advanced to senior manager at Hargrove. She shared the news with her workmates, and I learned about it 3 days later during dinner. "Congratulations," I said, wondering why she hadn't told me earlier. Her expression was familiar yet puzzling. "You've been preoccupied," she explained. "I'm building a company for us," I responded. She echoed the phrase, not as a query, but to gauge its significance. April 2022 marked Katrina's ascension to partner at Hargrove Partners. Unlike some firms, Hargrove is selective about awarding partnerships. There are only 7 partners in their Austin office. At 30, Katrina made history as the firm's youngest partner ever. With 6 years post-business school experience, this was an exceptional accomplishment. It's crucial to emphasize that she rightfully earned it. She is intelligent and tenacious, truly deserving of this recognition. Her father organized a grand celebration at a Chico's private dining room on North Lamar, inviting 50 guests and providing an open bar, signaling a Whitmore victory. I was dressed in formal attire, arrived punctually, ready to toast my wife. However, the evening turned out to be the worst night of our marriage. It began subtly. Gerald's speeches. He made 3, which should give you an idea, highlighted Katrina's achievements extensively, while barely acknowledging me, merely as a background element, not particularly captivating. Katrina's Hargrove colleagues knew her as Katrina Whitmore, not Katrina Calloway or Mrs. Calloway. Whitmore approached me around 9 near the bar after several glasses of scotch. In his inebriated state, Gerald was more candid but as controlled as ever. He questioned me privately. "Noah," he began, "can I ask you something directly?" I consented. "For how long do you plan to lead that company?" I replied, "until it's built something significant." He then implied I wasn't necessary for Katrina's success, saying, "What she doesn't need is a risk." I disagreed, asserting I wasn't a liability. "For 7 years, you've operated a small software firm, but it hasn't yielded substantial profits. This isn't a startup anymore, Noah, it's merely a business. Gerald, with due respect, your statement lacks accuracy." His finance experience of 35 years, however, supports his assertion. Before I could respond, Katrina, who had been listening, stepped beside Gerald. She expressed her agreement with Gerald, suggesting that the company's trajectory wasn't promising and perhaps it was time to face reality. This conversation marked a pivotal moment in the evening, which has stayed etched in my memory since then. Katrina looked at me, then at her father. She stated loudly enough for the surrounding individuals to hear, "Dad is correct, Noah. I've been contemplating this for some time. Perhaps it's high time an individual with substantial business acumen takes charge, or else we risk total collapse." The room fell into a hush, even though it was bustling with revelers. Among those who overheard were Katrina's brother Derek, 2 of her top colleagues from Hargrove, and my former business associate, Elijah Turner, an early investor of ours. My wife and I exchanged glances. I remained silent. I drained my drink. I placed the empty glass on the bar and departed for my coat, leaving without incident or uttering a word. No grand displays, no hurtful remarks, but sleep eluded me that night. In my Tarrytown home office, I examined an email from Sequoia Capital's partner in Austin, Rachel Goddard, which had been in my inbox for 6 days, proposing to lead our Series C with a pre-money valuation of $87 million and a total round size of $95 million. I made up my mind and contacted Rachel at 6:30 a.m. "I need to expedite the closing schedule," I said. "How soon?" she questioned. "Within 24 hours, if feasible." There was a brief pause. "That's swift," she replied. "Is it achievable?" After another pause, she responded, "The paperwork is mostly prepared. I'll make some calls." At 11:47 p.m. the following day, the wire transfer arrived, totaling $94.3 million. In a different narrative, I could tell you that I dealt with those months gracefully, communicated clearly, exhibited emotional presence, and balanced work crises with personal relationships during that period. However, I aspire to be that individual. I recount my past self to you. The evening Brendan and I settled on a buyout, I arrived home at 1 in the morning. Katrina sat awake in the kitchen with a glass of wine, engrossed in her laptop screen. She looked up as I entered, not uttering any hostility or complaints, merely gazing at me like someone awaiting a long-time arrival, and asked, "Are you hungry?" To which I replied, "I ate at the office." She resumed her laptop usage without comment. I should have joined her there, expressed my desires to discuss the week's feelings, shared our shared history, but instead said, "I'm tired, I'm heading to bed." She consented, and we continued our routine of pretending everything was all right. It wasn't dramatic, no explosions, just a quiet dance around unspoken words. Two individuals sharing a kitchen, dining table, and bedroom, yet growing more estranged each passing month. It's a distance that remains concealed until a day arrives when you find yourself at a celebration for your wife's promotion, only to recognize that you can no longer fathom the source of her joy. You understand the title, but the essence of her work eludes you. You ceased inquiring. The time span between the Brendan incident and the closing of Series C spanned 14 months. During this time, Pathstream expanded from 41 employees to 78, acquired a second significant enterprise client, and Rachel Goddard from Sequoia initially reached out to discuss possibilities for growth capital. An email I reread thrice before I was convinced it conveyed its intended meaning. Over a span of 14 months, it seemed Katrina and Gerald held discussions concerning our marriage and Pathstream, which I became aware of piece by piece, much like discovering hidden matters. Remarks in passing, moments of avoidance, and shifts in conversation topic were among the ways I uncovered these secrets. It transpired that Gerald had been attempting to establish Katrina's role with regard to Pathstream's assets for over a year. As I understand it, his rationale was this. Katrina had made significant financial concessions in Pathstream's early days, such as foregoing the McKinsey internship and using her salary to cover company expenses during two critical cash flow periods in 2018 and 2019. From Gerald's perspective, these actions warranted her a substantial stake in the company, and if Pathstream were ever to falter, which he thought probable, she deserved safeguarding. The logic wasn't entirely correct, yet his error lay in execution rather than the fundamentals. The gravest misstep was urging his daughter to unexpectedly enter my office with lawyers instead of engaging in a mature discussion about her concerns and needs. However, Gerald Whitmore had determined years prior that interacting with me was a waste of time. His opinion of me was fixed in 2016, during a conversation in his Houston living room when he heard his daughter discuss the man she was dating, an unschooled entrepreneur lacking credentials. Despite subsequent events and the company's evolution, he never reconsidered this judgment. The most perilous individual is one who is incorrect yet certain, not merely mistaken. I arrived at the office the following morning at 7 a.m., alerting Damien of the upcoming situation at 8 a.m. Later, Priya, our sales head, Courtney Young, a newcomer who had been with us from Salesforce for 2 years and worked tirelessly to secure the deals that made this funding round possible, announced her arrival. I briefed everyone before 9 a.m. At 9:30, Katrina strode into Pathstream's offices at 801 Barton Springs Road, accompanied by Gerald, who had brought 2 lawyers, both exuding the air of hourly paid professionals. In her hand was a leather portfolio, and on her face an unfamiliar expression, not anger but certainty, as if she already knew she had won. The lobby fell silent. Tyler's coffee cup hovered motionless in midair. Katrina looked at me across the lobby, speaking clearly for all to hear. "I'm here to reclaim what rightfully belongs to me before this ailing enterprise sinks completely." Gerald nodded behind her, smugly content. One lawyer moved forward and began discussing marital assets and business appraisals. Then I interjected, "Damien." Damien exited his office, holding a solitary document. He passed it to Gerald's main attorney. The attorney scrutinized the paper, read it twice, and his expression altered. Gerald peered over and read it as well, and his countenance changed too. It was the wire confirmation for $94.3 million. The transaction, Pathstream Technologies Series C, had closed at a pre-money valuation of $87 million. Sequoia Capital served as the lead investor. Katrina accepted the paper from her father. After reading it, she looked up at me. The room was so silent I could hear the air conditioning running. At last, Gerald questioned in a voice devoid of certainty. "When did this occur?" I replied. "Last night at 11:47 p.m., Katrina glanced up from the paper, her gaze meeting mine. I wished to convey that I felt victorious. After 7 years, the Waffle House napkin, the air mattress Brendan Walsh ordeal, the unheard Thanksgiving conversation, and the previous night's party moments I thought symbolized triumph. I felt something different. Exhaustion, sadness, a deep sense of mourning, which might sound peculiar under the circumstances, enveloped me. As I watched my wife across the lobby, her eyes reflecting the figure on that paper, it struck me that this was not a victory. It was an ending, the final chapter in a tale that had been subtly winding down for years, between unspoken words we should have shared. Within 20 minutes, Gerald and his lawyers departed, their silence echoing the absence of remaining things to say. Their proposed legal claim disintegrated when the Series C confirmation surfaced, as Katrina couldn't seize control of a $90 million firm in Austin, Texas on a typical workday morning. Katrina remained seated in the lobby chair as the office resumed its usual activities around her. Tyler kindly brought her coffee without being asked. I sat opposite her, and there was an extended silence before she uttered, "I didn't realize. I understand you didn't either." "Katrina, about last night at the party," she paused, then continued. "What I said you believed was accurate. That isn't a justification. I didn't claim it was." She set down her coffee cup. "For so long, I've been enraged with you, and I've convinced myself that my anger was about the company, the risk, all the potential issues. But it wasn't really. Presently, I'm not convinced that was the underlying issue. Rather, it appears it stemmed from my longing for your presence, a feeling I've harbored for years. In an attempt to conceal this sorrow, I transformed it into resentment, as acknowledging grief seemed more arduous. Upon reflection, I realized this. It resonated with me, much like recognizing something you've long known but lacked the words to express. I too missed you, and my method of expression was by dedicating myself to 16-hour workdays and neglecting our anniversaries. You noticed, didn't you?" She observed me intently. Despite all that had transpired, a hint of tenderness seemed to grace the corners of her expression. I overlooked not one but two anniversaries. In an attempt at justification, I remind you that one anniversary coincided with a significant product launch. Yet I recognize this is no excuse. I wish to be truthful about what transpired next, as I've seen enough narratives unfold in movies, videos, and books to know that the tales people usually tell are more polished than reality. The scenario concludes with Katrina and I parting ways following a quiet separation 3 weeks later in Terrytown. No dramatic arguments or destruction occurred. Instead, we had an open dialogue at the kitchen table on a Sunday afternoon, which was our most honest conversation in years. Eventually, we acknowledged that something irreparable had occurred between us, for which neither an additional Series C nor apologies could heal. Presently, we are undergoing divorce proceedings, which are amicable. We have competent lawyers and aim to complete the process ethically, primarily through a slow and costly, yet kind, approach. Gerald Whitmore contacted me 2 months post our encounter in the lobby, and I nearly declined his call. In that instance, Gerald Whitmore was silent for a spell before admitting, "I owe you an apology." I replied, "You were defending your daughter." He countered, "I was disregarding you. There's a disparity. You established something genuine, and I couldn't perceive it because I'd predetermined what you were." That moment held the most esteem I've ever had for Gerald Whitmore in the 6 years I've known him. In that year, Pathstream concluded a hiring phase in July. We currently have 143 employees. Our software oversees logistics functions for distribution networks across 12 states, including 3 of the leading grocery chains in the southern United States. We are progressing towards a Series D. Priya has become my co-CEO. She should have been given this title 3 years prior, and I informed her of that when I granted it. Damien purchased a residence in South Austin. He periodically sends me a photo of his backyard garden because he knows it irritates me, and he finds this amusing. He is correct to find it amusing. Tyler, formerly the boy in the lobby holding a coffee cup during the incident, is currently our customer success leader. He continues to decline Google's offers whenever they contact him. Elijah Turner, an old acquaintance who observed the party, messaged me the day after the deal was sealed with just 4 words. "I told you, keep going." I still hold onto those 4 words. Occasionally, I revisit them. As for Katrina achieved managing partner status at Hargrove last spring. She now oversees their operations practice group. Her skills are exceptional, and she's on track to become one of the top in her field. We met for lunch in April, a stone's throw from Frostbank Tower, at a location on Congress Avenue that we frequented during our relationship. Our conversation lasted 2 hours. We reminisced about the past, recalling the Waffle House napkin, the apartment with the air mattress, and Juan's $1 million idea at 7 a.m. At the close of our lunch, she admitted, "I ought to have trusted you." I responded, "I wish I could have given you less reason for doubt." She countered, "We should have communicated more." I agreed, "Indeed." Instead, we opted for a handshake as we parted ways, an unusual and slightly formal gesture. It felt fitting after our shared ordeals, neither too little nor too much to warrant anything else. Currently, she is with someone else. I sincerely wish him well. Without any resentment, I genuinely hope he's a good man. If you glean anything from this tale, it's this: the company did not prevent my marriage's downfall. Achievements don't automatically mend what was broken during the construction process. The funds are legitimate. The product is authentic. The 143 individuals who come to Pathstream daily are real, and the marriage that dissolved is no less so. Money cannot undo the cost of what transpired. I recount this narrative not to elicit pity, but as a lesson learned. 20 years old when I determined that constructing something was the best use of my time, I spent the subsequent decade validating this decision, but misunderstood the critical aspect. The crucial element isn't closing a Series C funding round. The vital factor lies in the person sitting opposite you during hardships, and whether you have the foresight to acknowledge their presence amidst the deafening clamor of ambition. I frequently neglected to do so, not as often or genuinely as needed. Katrina Whitmore was the most brilliant individual I ever romantically involved with, and the most competent professional I've ever observed at work. Over 7 years, I inadvertently made her feel insignificant while constructing something intended for her participation. That's entirely my fault. If you are currently creating a company, career, or any endeavor requiring more than you believe you have to offer, I am not advising you to halt your efforts. Continue building. People are needed who construct, yet contact this individual. Attend the dinner and disclose your fears instead of working late into the night, feigning bravery. Since I got the alarming message, I was seated in an office filled with individuals who trusted me. The person I wished to display that confirmation email to was already out of town, making a decision we both couldn't undo. Delay not for the wire.